this fourth edition of the Polemics podcast. And this week we're going to be doing something different, as it had been hinted in the tweet we sent earlier today. In the tweet we sent today, we're going to be doing something different, something interesting. We're going to be having a debate. So we have a topic here, and I am going to moderate because I am not good at debates, and Abigail and Tosin are going to go at the proposition. Woke vocabulary is a tool for limiting free speech. Now, one of the interesting things we've been hearing, especially on social media, especially in the entertainment industry, especially around basically, is the idea of being woke, and the idea of woke vocabulary, and the idea of speech that is cancelled because it's not woke enough, because it is defined as hate speech. So we're going to look at these things, and Tosin is going to be arguing the proposition that woke vocabulary is a tool for limiting free speech, while Abigail is going to argue against that definition. So we would hope to do this in about 30 minutes. And the format for this debate is going to go as such. The two debaters are going to have 2 minutes to basically give their opening statement for 2 minutes, and then there will be 5 minutes each for the development of their arguments, and then 2 minutes of counter arguments, and we will close with 30 minutes final statements. So, who goes first? I would say he who is, I can't remember what the Latin word is, but the person who is arguing the proposition has to go first. So, Tosin, in 2 minutes, can you give an opening statement in support of the thesis, woke vocabulary is a tool for limiting free speech? So, Tosin.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's fine. The first thing I need you to do is can you define woke vocabulary is?
Well, that's for you. Define it, woke vocabulary, and then what you mean by woke vocabulary and how it limits free speech. So, what do we mean by woke vocabulary? Because most times when you hear woke vocabulary, you hear about words that are modern, that describe what we could call modern day realities, like modern day realities, like things like intersectionality, things like the phobias, the homophobias, the transphobias, Islamophobia, and so on. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, in that case, I'd call it woke speak. So woke speak is a subset of a wider cultural, modern, quasi-religious phenomenon. It's a modern day religion, and one of the tenets of this religion is that words are violence, and it seeks to restrict the free expression of ideas. One, by limiting what people can say and basically banning words. And also, it also seeks to alter reality by changing the meaning of words. Right. I don't mind them count. I don't the changes in the meaning of words. However, when there's an attempt to change the framework of language, and restrict what they and what people can think by controlling language itself, then it's an attempt to restrict freedom of thinking, freedom of expression. And this goes mental root of what language is. Language is it's a attempt by people to express the contents of their minds. And by saying that certain though it's also saying that certain words are wrong and certain words should be punished by extreme means and certain words are violence, you you restrict you restrict the avenue for people to communicate with each other and to think. So that said, the woke vocabulary and what the phenomenon is an attempt to restrict freedom of speech and thought. It's not a good attempt and it will not be a successful attempt, but it is an attempt to people can say to each and then also restricts what people and by extension restrict what thoughts and what ideas can be expressed. So that's me.
Okay.
I'll let Abigail
Okay.
go on and then we can move
Okay.
forward with this.
Okay. Okay. So, Abigail, in 2 minutes, can you give your opening statement against the thesis that woke vocabulary is a tool for limited free speech?
Well, unlike Tosin, I will not be asking what vocabulary is because it's already been explained. What to start off, everyone on earth, and so anything that would limit freedom will cause a revolt. If we go through the annals of history, we'll find that most revolutions that happened were caused by people trying to limit other people's freedoms in one way or the other. Talk about the French Revolution, even apartheid is all about restricting freedoms. So, in this debate, I am going to be making the case that work vocabulary does not limit freedoms because, to start with, if it does limit freedom, we would have a revolt in our hands, which we instead, I will be saying that woke vocabulary actually expands and elevates conversation. I will be taking time to explain what vocabulary is and why we need work vocabulary or an expanded vocabulary to expand the we currently are having, and that certain issues that not been focused on, issues on the youth issues that have been treated as hush hush because of work vocabulary, they are now in the front burner of discuss both on social media, and they have come into our consciousness because of the vocabulary that has been introduced. And so instead of limiting freedom, work vocabulary, expanded vocabulary has all actually done us a whole lot of good in that it has improved our freedom.
Okay. So I will still keep it with you,
That will
Abigail,
be my
because
submission.
you the crook. Okay. I will still keep the mic with you because your opening statement basically looks at um, how book vocabulary has allowed people who, in your argument, historically have been left out of the conversation, have allowed them to be brought into the conversation. It has expanded in your argument, according to your argument, the it has expanded freedom to people who did not have a voice. So rather than limiting free speech, it has expanded free speech. So free speech is not only now for the what people would call the um, what people call the groups that have always been privileged, but it has expanded it to less privileged and oppressed groups. I think this is where your argument is going.
Yes.
So, can you expand? Can you expand on that? In expanding, I would ask if you could give certain examples. For example, to give certain examples.
Yes. Okay. So first, sure, definitely. So when we let's first of all look at the word work. When we say work vocabulary, the word work itself is an example of an expanded lexicon. A couple of years ago, it's not the word work was not in our consciousness. So woke is a slang for social awareness. And so when we talk about woke vocabulary, we're talking about language that is promoting social awareness. And this cannot be a so the bigger question is needs the expanded lexicon. There are two reasons that I'm going. One is for the sake of sensitivity. Second is for precision. Now, sensitivity, uh, like you did mention, certain people who there are certain people who generally would not have the opportunity to speak out or to contribute to conversations because the words that can you hear? I am getting your that my
No, no, go on, go on, go on, go on,
uh
go on, go on, go on. Just go on,
my audio
go on.
is
Let's just
bad.
okay. Let's just go on, just go on, go on.
Let me
It's
quickly
getting
think
better now,
about
but just
that.
go on.
Right. So I was saying that look that work was actually a slang vocab is used for social awareness that creates vocabulary that creates. And I said there are two reasons why we are having this the need for this expanded lexicon or what we are referring here now as vocabulary, and those two reasons are for sensitivity and the second is for precision. Sensitivity in that there are certain things that we, like I would say, open all our mouth and say, which we really shouldn't. And so with the expanded vocabulary, we are more sensitive to the feelings of other people. And this cannot be a bad thing because thinking about other people before you speak or using language that does not dehumanize or does not bring people down is not a bad thing. And having more words like that in our vocabulary only helps us to be more sensitive to the feelings of others and to be more in tune with how others see the world and how they feel the world and how they experience the world. And when we are in tune with how others feel and experience the world, then we are in a better position to also experience the world from their eyes. This cannot be a bad thing. The second is for precision. As I mentioned at the outset, there are certain things that we have been burying under euphemisms that we've been very hush hush about. And so expanded vocabulary helps us in that we now know the right words to use when we are trying to address people or to address certain situations. For instance, one phrase that a lot of people may have come to know is the phrase uh, cultural appropriation. Now, cultural appropriation simply means that someone borrows from a dominant culture, but that in borrowing from that dominant culture, the person has not treated the borrowed culture as sacred or does not put into consideration the way the owners of that culture would like to preserve its sanctity. Now, it's easy for someone to accuse other people of cultural appropriation. But then there is another vocabulary that would help to counter if someone would say, oh, you're appropriating someone's culture. Because of another vocabulary that has arisen, it's easy for you to come and counter that and say, no, I wasn't appropriating culture. What I actually got involved in is cultural exchange or cultural appreciation. So when we have more words to express the things that we want to say, or to say the things we want to say, it's never a bad thing. It's always a good thing. I'll use an example now, a study that was conducted on children who are learning to speak. The study shows that a group of children, when they were 18 months old, and then they were studied again when they were 24 months old. And researchers found that children who heard more words when they were knew more words and were faster in word recognition when they were 24. And what about for adults? For adults, an expanded vocabulary, abstract things. The larger your vocabulary, the easier it becomes to break away from old thoughts or new lines of reasoning. And so when we have new words to express our thoughts, then we are able to think much. We have a new pathway of thought. We are able to think in new ways because we have new words to express the way we think. In fact, that's a particular study that was conducted on, it was a 20-year research. It shows that people advanced in their careers because of expanded vocabulary. So the only way we can have expanded vocabulary is by having new words introduced into our vocabulary. And so because of the new socialization, where the world is now in terms of political socialization and where we are as far as growth is concerned, because of this, we have come up with new words to express the way we feel and the way we think and the things that we want to think about. So I do not actually see why anyone would think that this is limited. This is actually the freedom that we're looking for. And words can only mean freedom because words help us express ourselves. And so more words would only help us express ourselves even more. Should I have said that's my submission at this time?
Thank you, Abigail. Now, your argument basically is that you gave examples of how vocabulary, especially with things like sensitivity and precision, how woke vocabulary has expanded our vocabulary, especially and made especially for in the case of sensitivity and precision. And Tosin, I would like you to respond to some of these points that she has brought up. And also because I think Abigail hasn't really addressed the fact or the accusation, let's call it an accusation for now, that the woke speech tends to also limit the kind of things that you can say. It also tends to change definition of words. So Tosin, how would you respond to some of the things that Abigail has said, the arguments that she has put forward? Tosin?
Yeah. So Abigail proposes that yes. So Abigail says that this expanded vocabulary does two things. That it serves the purposes of expanding what people can say or think, which is true, as I will prove. And also, she says it helps with precision. And that's really one of the big failures of woke speak. For example, the word cultural appropriation, which does two things. One, the term cultural appropriation assumes that assumes that someone has taken something from someone without permission. So you have taken an aspect of someone's, say, culture without the person's permission. Who do you take permission from? you see the issue of precision. It assumes that there is someone that you can take permission from before you take an aspect of someone's culture or attribute something. And you can always attribute something to someone. That's reasonable. And then the woke speak comes from, it is rooted in a worldview that sees people as either oppressed or oppressors. So if you are not an oppressed person, you are an oppressor. There is no middle ground. There is no nuance. It doesn't see the world in the various colors that it exists. It doesn't understand that, for example, in some situations across the stream of time, people have been oppressed and people have been oppressors. And most people have been oppressed for most of history. It doesn't see that. It's it sees the world in a very simplistic and hollow manner, and it reflects in the use and the kind of in the use of the new words that come up. It says that she says things like it restricts words that are insensitive to people's feelings. That's fine, but always hurt people's feelings. So do we not speak? If you want to say something profound and breaking, and if you're going to say something that is that 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 pushes the envelope into new thoughts, you run the risk of actually offending people. And that's what the woke culture and the woke language and this new phenomenon restricts. So if I'm going to say something or describe something that will hurt someone's feelings, and it may be true, I'm not allowed to say it. So as much as she says that it opens, it increases your precision, it does not. And as she says again, it tries to open up new ideas. It doesn't. And then again, she talks about how new words improve, I don't know, life outcomes. That's within the linguistic framework that already exists. So that's my submission.
Okay. Okay, thank you,
Can
Tosin.
you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can. Thank you. So, before we go on, I think we can reduce both sides of the argument to certain points. And I think there is something we need to look at here, because we're basically saying that the new terms, the new ways of speaking, that is considered woke tends to enrich our vocabulary, enrich the way we look at the world. So for me there's a key question here that I want to see how, on both sides, how you guys look at this question. That is the question of, what do words represent? Because obviously we know that in language, words describe things, words describe realities, what describes the way we feel. It's used to describe realities in nature, in human beings, etc. Now we know that over time the use of words can and have changed. The question now is, how does it change? Is it something that is gradual, or it has always been something that has been gradual? But one of the key arguments against woke speech is that the proponent of woke speech, one, is not patient enough and wants to use the power of coercion, basically, to, in a sense, impose these new terms, these new ways of speaking on everybody, without having to go through the hard parts of getting those things acceptable gradually by the normal ways in which words begin to be used. That's one. The second one is also that woke speech usually tends to that there are certain realities that are defined in certain ways, and because there is some there's that ideological bent that can be that that ideology that wants to see the world in a certain way. Words are created that are go opposite to the meaning of those realities, and then everybody is forced to take to to use those words in contrary to the realities what we know to be real. So the question, Abigail, is um, why does is it that why this impatience?
Okay, so I want to address two things that Tosin said. And the very first one I want to talk about is that he said um, the concepts that Tosin is describing is not words, he's describing people. He's saying that people use words to do this. That's not the fault of the words, that's the fault of the people using the words. And let me make this clear that certain new words have been introduced into the vocabulary does not cancel out old words. Neither does it say you must use these words. Words are meant as communicative devices. So if we have new words, that means that we have new words or new communicative devices. We have new new lexicon that we can use to communicate. And again, like I said, that does not cancel out old lexicon. That you said that he used the word, he used the example that I had used earlier, cultural appropriation, and said, oh, that the phrase cultural appropriation exists, it's limited. No, it's not. It's a phrase. You either use it, you accept it is, or you say, no, I do not accept it, which is why I used it as an example earlier, that someone can come up to you and say, oh, this is cultural appropriation. And you say, no, it's not. It's actually cultural exchange or it's cultural appreciation. So the word exists does not mean that it is true or that it is something that must be used or that it is acceptable. It can also be rejected with other words. Words are simply communicative devices. And if we must communicate as humans, which is what makes us stand out, then words evolve, they take on new meanings, we add new words to our vocabulary, it expands, and it helps to promote free speech. There is no way that you can argue that the creation of new words or the existence of new words or the expansion of our lexicon is leading to curtailing speech. No, people are the ones who curtail speech. It is not words that curtail speech, but the way that people choose to use those words. And then I would also like to add at this point that he made a point that I said word restricts sensitivity. No, I said we have words to say what we want to say if we choose to use certain words. So a person wants to talk about something and he chooses to be politically correct. That is his choice. He now has words to use to be politically correct. He is not forced to say that a female actor is an actress because there is no recognized word to say actor. He's not forced to say that it's a manhole when he chooses to use maybe people hole because there are new words that he can use. So a person who chooses to be sensitive can be sensitive because he has words to express his sensitivity. Whereas a person who chooses not to be sensitive can continue using the words that exist and still have their meanings. So at the end of the day, it is not the words that are to blame. It's not the vocabulary that is to blame. It is how people choose to use the vocabulary. And how they choose to use the vocabulary is dependent on each individual. The existence of words in themselves does not restrict speech. And that's the argument I'm making. It is how people choose. I mean, it's like freedom. Freedom exists for everyone to pick. You can choose to be free. But then, if you decide to jump off a moving vehicle, you also know that you're going to get hurt. So that's how words are. Words are there. Or maybe I should use a better example. We have knives. Everyone knows that what a knife can be used for. It can be used to kill, but also you can use a knife to peel yam. You can use it to cook. So a knife can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So it depends on how the person chooses to use it. So words are like that. You can use as far as the words exist. If the words do not exist, you won't be able to use them. But once the words exist, then you can use them in whichever way you choose to use them. And that's my point, that woke vocabulary does not limit speech, rather it expands it. It gives us more freedom to have more words to use in ways that we choose to use them.
Okay, Tosin, I would like you to respond to that, even though there's something I've noticed, but I would like you to respond.
Like I said, my initial assertion was that the existence of these vogue words, this expanded in quotes, was as a result of people over trying to control and restrict what people say and what people can think. So, and you can see that by how the woke ideology, whatever the ideology that drives this thinking, has stretched to change, to alter the meaning of existing words. So, for example, Abigail, please define the word woman.
I should define the word woman.
Abigail, can you define the word? Can you define what a woman? Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Interestingly, that's one of the words that I took out. A woman is a female person.
Okay, Tosin.
No.
According to you.
A girl can be a female person.
That's you.
That's the definition. A woman is an adult human female.
I said it's
that's what the word means. That's literally what the word means.
You are the one who is telling me no, using words to tell me that my definition of woman is wrong. You are the one using words to tell me that the definition of woman is wrong. You are employing words.
No,
so
Abigail.
How can you at the same time say that the words that you are employing
in your frame, in your expanded
is,
framework. So in your expanded framework,
Tosin,
I can say this is a valid statement. This is a valid logical statement. A 9-year-old woman walked into my house. Is that a valid statement?
You asked me a question, who is a woman? And I said a female person. Now, if you are speaking,
yes, I said define what a woman is. And you said a woman is a female person.
Yes. Is a woman not female? Is she not a person?
I doubt.
Yes, you said a woman is a female person. So you can say, yes. And I say that's wrong because there are female persons that are not women.
Okay.
A 9-year-old or 6-year-old is not a woman.
Okay. What has that got to do with woke vocabulary? You think I defined woke vocabulary as a female person because of woke vocabulary? Is that your point? Because I don't get it.
I think before we go on,
yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that
let's just pause it at this point.
Existence of this woke vocabulary and this framework alters the framework of language in itself. So the ideology permeates what language and then alters the meaning of words in such a way and manner that it's impossible.
Is there anywhere, I was going to ask you a question, is there anywhere that it is written, aside from my saying this now, that, a woman is a female person, without taking into consideration
and again,
whether you're talking about a grown woman or a young woman? The question I'm asking you is this. Is there anywhere that the definition of woman has changed?
Okay. I think let's rather than going
You have changed. You have attempted to change
going
the
through this
definition
I
of a
know I
word,
have not
which
attempted to change
means
any
woman
definition.
means
Nope.
adult,
Nope.
adult
I
human
have not
female.
attempted to change any definition. I'm not holding a dictionary. You asked me a question off the top of my head. Oh, I said, oh, a female person.
But you
So you said, oh,
you
he's
just changed
adult.
it now.
And I said,
You said you s-
so see,
Okay,
you asked me who is
okay.
a woman, and I
I think
said, an
I think this
adult
is I think
female.
this is
yeah,
A female
I think
person.
this
because I was actually going to I was actually going to get I was actually going. What is a female?
What is a female? Are you talking about biologically or what?
Yes.
Biologically, who is a female?
No. What
okay,
is a
guys,
female?
guys. Okay, guys. I think we need
Yes.
to.
Who is a
I think
female?
I think
Biologically, a biological female has a vagina and she has the features of a woman,
And
of a female. All the features, all the biological features of a
okay.
female is what a biological female is.
I
are
think
there non-biological females? Are there
That's
unbiological
another
females?
question you're asking me. You're moving off the definition of who a woman or a female is. You're going
So
right out
what I'm
and
getting towards is that its language should reflect a framework based on reality as is, not reality
so
as
you are trying to
someone
tell me
wishes
that
it to
the
be.
so you are trying to, by your definition, you are now trying to restrict the way people define things. You are the one who is trying to restrict things. Oh, it should be based on what
Yes,
is and not what a person thinks it should be. You are the one who is restricting. Language does not restrict. Words do not restrict. Vocabulary does not restrict. It is people
language.
like you who restricts and not the words. The words are existing there for us to use them the way we choose to use them. If you now
okay.
decide that you want to redefine things, then that's you. It's on you, the individual, and not on the words.
Okay, now I think there's a
The word,
fundamental
look, the
problem.
words
And
have
Tosin, can you just pause for a minute? I think there's a fundamental problem with both your understandings of the topic of the debate, because I think from Abigail's point of view, where she's looking at it is she's saying that the new words that form woke vocabulary are added to basically our vocabulary. So it's basically like you are widening speech. But Tosin is coming from the frameworks that we can say the ideological frameworks that where these woke vocabularies come from, what they reflect, the ideologies that they reflect. And one thing about ideologies, I think, is that they are reflections of how the world is, or explanations of how the world is, or ideas of this is how the world is and this is how the world should work. And whatever vocabulary we're using as human beings, I feel should be based on a framework. There is a framework of what we think reality is, and we're using words to describe them. So I think what Tosin is arguing from, and Abigail, I want you to respond to this before we end, is that he is arguing that the ideologies that that where these woke words come from, basically because they are seeing the world in a certain way, it means that the terms they use will exclude other terms that basically work with other ideologies or other frameworks. And if these
Okay.
frameworks happen to not be the real, not to
in
reflect
addition,
reality,
in addition,
go on, Tosin. Go on. You said in addition, so go on.
yes, in addition, the ideological framework of woke speak is based on an utopia that does not exist, and in
Okay.
such is incompatible with reality.
Okay.
Therefore, woke speak cannot be used as a tool for free thought because it is restricted to an ideology frame. And if you do not exist in that framework, or if you do not act in that framework, it is impossible for you to communicate with this language. For you to use the language and the framework for anything coherent or to express any ideas. That's the point I'm driving at.
Okay, so I think so. I think you get. So Abigail, I want you to to respond to this specifically because this is the problem. Because if woke vocabulary is just basically new exotic ways of saying things and not a way of using new words or using not new words because most of the woke words are in new words, using old words, redefining old words in order to redefine how we view reality, how we understand reality, there wouldn't be a problem. But it seems like woke speech or woke vocabulary is. So that's the question I'm putting to you. Your final question, where you can make your closing statements also. How do you reconcile woke vocabulary as a tool for changing the way we think, for trying to change the way we think, trying to change the way we see the world? How would that not limit freedom of speech, freedom of thought?
Well, as I've said over and over during the course of this conversation, words become what we choose that they become. If the color is black and you wake up tomorrow and you decide that the color is no longer black, that it is white, and you can get as many people as possible to see it your way, that it is now white, then we'll stop calling black black and we'll start calling it white. It's an entire change in lifestyle. It's a social change, and it becomes what it is. The English language, for instance, where the English language is now, it's not where it was a couple of hundred years ago. It has expanded, new words have been introduced. Authors introduce new words to their vocabulary literally each time they write, and then when it becomes mainstream, people accept it and they move on with it. When it comes to what we are referring to here now as woke speech, I maintain that these are just words and they are instruments for making conversation. They are instruments for communicating. How you choose to, whether you choose to accept the words or reject the words based on whatever ideology you are pursuing, is not an indictment on the words. It's an indictment on the people that are pushing or these ideologies. And so at the end of the day, the question is, how do you choose to use the word? And choosing is a choice. Choice is about freedom. If you do not have freedom, you cannot make a choice. And so, vocabulary, woke, unwoke, or whatever, would always be a tool for free speech.
Okay. Tosin, I would like you to end. Tosin,
Again, I will conclude. Yes,
I would like you to conclude. Yeah.
I would like to conclude by saying, the woke speak adopts a relativistic view of the world, which is imprecise, which and the framework is by its compatible with free speech. One, because it's imprecise and people cannot agree what word, and also because thoughts are excluded from the woke framework. Now, this is a serious issue. Because the purpose of language and the purpose of the expression is to ensure that two or three people are speaking, that two or competing views rise up, and then the best and the most of the world wins. A linguistic already excludes other views ab initio. It is impossible, it's effectively impossible to have free speech. And that's where I would like to end. I'd like to end by saying this. He who controls the words controls the thoughts of people. And since woke speak comes from a centralized point of view and a centralized ideology, it is incompatible with free speech because it comes from one source. And that's where I'd like to end things.
Okay, so thank you, Tosin. Thank you, Abigail, for what I think and what I think and hope was a debate that brought out a lot of things. Um, uh, that brought out a lot of things, and maybe we have learned a number of things or a number of arguments on both sides, because it's clear, at least from the debate, that both sides have points that are points that points that actually make sense. Okay, so moving on, I think we have to draw this to an end, to draw this episode to an end. Before we do that, we have to look at other topics. I think we've gone back where we've left the debate stage now, and we're back to the conversation stage. So let's look at some trending topics, at least for the week.
Oh, what a relief.
Trending topics for the week, matters arising. And let's start locally. There was the news that El-Rufai sent his son to a state government school. State government school. There have been different reactions.
That's nice.
From nice to he's walking the talk, to this is virtue signaling, this is posturing, this is him trying to front himself with 2023 in mind and all of that. So what do you guys think?
I think it's nice. I think it's sensible. It's good. It's good optics, even if it's a virtue signal. It's a very expensive virtue signal sending your child to a public school. Does show that he is at least committed to improving education, even if it's in only that school. But it's actually a good thing. It's actually a good thing for him to put his mouth where his work is.
Okay, Abigail.
Yeah. One thing that humans are incapable of doing is reading minds and motives. We can only guess what people's motives are and why they do things that they cannot jump into we're not in their hearts, and so we cannot accurately say why they do what they do. And so for whatever reason that he put his child in a public school, he had made a promise that he will do it, and he has kept his promise.
Okay.
Did he promise to do so?
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's interesting.
Anyway, I guess on my own side, on my own part, I guess it's a good thing. I guess at least for that school, if the other children in that school will actually have a lot to gain. The teachers in that school have a lot to gain, and there'll also be greater responsibility on them. I just hope he doesn't have to bend the rules and bend the standards, because obviously, I mean, if there is, for example, is there going to be extra allocation to that school, extra funding for that school because his son is there? Is the teachers they're going to be paid better? The facilities there, those kind of things that tend to happen when you have a big man, a child of a big man in the area. So yeah, it's a good example, and it's an example that I hope more people copy, even though there are governors who have had their children in maybe not state primary and secondary schools. At least I know the Enugu State Governor Sullivan, I think at some point had his daughter was a UNN. So it's not like it's a new thing, but it's a good thing. Okay, what other things?
I'd like to let's first to the teacher of El-Rufai's child. Let's just the person would be very tense right now.
Yes.
Imagine you
very, very
with El-Rufai's penchant of school teachers. They bring that innocent poor boy to your class. You have have to be on your A game.
Yeah, you really have to be on your A game because
All right. Yeah.
you probably have somebody watching
You
and
must bring
monitoring
your A game.
to know whether his son is being taught properly. Because it's actually, like you said,
You want to check. You want to make sure that.
all right. So moving on, let's just take one other happening event, and the happening event. This is September, so September it's usually where you have the UN summit, and it seems like it's almost every year where the UN summit devolves into a talk about climate, and this year is no exception with the climate strikes. This also links to the school thing, the climate strikes um, by school students, starting I think from Friday, and well, there's the top of climate and the alarmism that comes with the fact that okay, um, if nothing is done to rein in carbon emissions, there's going to be Armageddon in the next 12 years. So Greta Thunberg basically gave a speech where she was basically angry and in very visible distress, basically talking about how we are destroying the dreams of the future generation. So, what do you guys think about climate? About climate
Well,
change? Not just climate.
I should be asking you. I should turn the question around and ask you. You're the geologist. You tell us. What do you think?
Climate change is will take to talk about climate change will require a full topic, a full edition of polemics. It require but one thing I can talk about, one thing I can say is that
Is the world's going to come to an end in 12 years?
anybody who tells you that anybody saying that the world's going to end in 12 years is talking like the typical religious doomsday person who tells you that the world is going to end tomorrow and you should sell all your property, because this is basically what this climate alarmism is basically sell everything, the world is going to end. There isn't any the data or what we know about the climate doesn't support any prediction that tells you for certain that the world is going to end in 12 years. And this is the problem, I think. This is the problem with climate science at this point. It has become so politicized, has become tied to ideologies that want to cede control, because this is basically about control. They want to cede control over things that have to do with the means of production, economies, to government bureaucracies. So this is basically what it's about. And the climate change is basically an excuse. It's basically an excuse for it. And well, we'll see how it's going to unravel, because these arguments tend to work with the West for now. That is why Greta is not attacking China or India. These are very large emitters of carbon dioxide. They're not attacking them. They're attacking the West. They're attacking the US. They're attacking Europe, because these are people where these are societies where this message seems to work. I don't know how long it's going to work, but we shall see.
Oh well, maybe like you said, we'll actually dedicate an entire episode of polemics to climate change, so you can shed more light on the entire issue.
Can be done.
Mhm. I think Tosin is still able.
Tosin?
No, I'm here. I also have to say that there's light in Sweden. So
Yep.
and yeah, there's light in Sweden.
Yep.
So and she has eaten. She's eating, and that's why she can say something
vegan.
as silly as
She's
stop
privileged.
drilling drilling for
Are
oil.
you trying to say that she's privileged?
She's vegan.
Are you trying to
I
say
don't
she's
like the word. I don't
privileged?
like the word privileged.
Okay. So
I
you
don't
abuse
like
it.
privileged.
Okay. All right. That's fine
No, I
then. I
don't. I
mean,
don't like the word.
your
It's
choice.
imprecise. I'm
I
trying
mean,
to
it's
say.
your choice.
What I'm trying to
It's your
say is that
choice not to use the
she
word.
comes from a society. She comes from a society her ancestors have done the work of providing a the adults in the society the work of providing a very high standard of living for her. So vegan.
So she's privileged.
Well,
Okay,
summary, summary.
vegan.
Huh?
Huh?
Am I? Am I
Is
what?
she a vegan? No,
Yeah,
I
she is.
mean, is she actually a vegan?
She is vegan.
Oh, then she comes from offers her that dietary choice. I would like to see her try being a vegan in our society, in a place like Nigeria, where you don't know where your next calorie is coming
Are you
from.
trying to say that
So
Nigerians
yeah,
cannot be
so
vegan? I think um, that's
Well,
a very atrocious thing to say.
I'm second order vegan.
I mean, it's preposterous for you
I
to
don't know.
say
I don't
that
understand what you mean.
there are
I
no
don't
vegans in
understand.
Nigeria.
No,
There are
I'm actually,
vegans here and they
I am
survive.
actually second. I'm second order vegan because I tend to eat animals that are
What
vegan.
does second order
He's a
what's
carnivore.
a second order vegan?
He's
I
saying
tend
he's a
to eat.
carnivore.
I tend to eat animals that eat vegetables. So
So he's
that
a
counts.
carnivore.
That
Yeah,
counts.
because I know the last time
Second
we
degree
went, the
vegan.
last time very large steak.
Is it Jevnik?
The guy was chowing on Jevdik and tearing meat and all that. So
They,
yeah, but in a society like in a country like ours where half of the country lives in poverty, you really don't have the choice of um of being a vegan. Being a vegan is a choice when you have surplus.
there was something I heard. I can't remember who I heard it from, but he talks about how it is actually because I'm not keeping for fossil fuels or anything, but it's actually because of our use of fossil fuels that we've been able to actually master climate, to master our environment in the sense of being able to live in even the harshest climates. And the argument was basically like if we're actually even going to survive climate change, it will actually be by using a lot of fossil fuels because the technologies that we'll use to fight climate change, to fight the effects of climate change, actually would depend on fossil fuels. I mean, because 300 years ago, there were many places that were uninhabitable that are inhabitable now. You couldn't live in Alaska, for example, 300 years ago, but now you could live and thrive in Alaska. You could thrive in Dubai, for example. Dubai would not exist without um, CO2, without fossil fuels. It will not. It will not be able to run at this point. Okay. Finally, let us go through our reads for the week. Abigail, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so I have two. I read, or would I say I watched something and then I read something else. I've been watching, as I mentioned, I think last week I've been watching TED Talks, and there's this one I watched which I really loved. It was by Sir Ken Robinson, and it's titled "How to Escape Education's Death Valley." It's on education, and I am passionate about education. And the way he broke down the "No Child Left Behind" um, mantra in the United States and what could be done to make it better really was inspiring. I loved it, and I would encourage everyone who is interested in education to listen to it. And the second is an article written by Chimamanda Adichie. Finally, I was able to read something written by Chimamanda Adichie, and it's about her hometown being under siege. And that's her hometown is Aba, Njikoka local government area of Anambra State, and how some people are using power politics to send the people in that place away from their area. It's a very touching story, and I'd encourage everyone to read that too. It's on the Guardian, so I'm sure that we'll share the links to both
Yeah.
reads at
Well,
the end of the video.
we share it at the end of the video. It will be on the video. I actually enjoyed reading that article because it made me respect Chimamanda because this was Chimamanda taking on somebody who is basically untouchable in the southeast. I mean, Author Eze is basically untouchable in the southeast, and she used her voice, she used her reach, she used her popularity, she used the fact that she cannot be intimidated by him to take him on, and I'm really glad she did that. Okay, so Tosin.
Yeah, I've been reading this book on management, Inside Drucker's Brain by Jeffrey A.
Inside,
Crames. Hello?
inside what?
Yes. Inside Drucker's Brain. So Drucker, F.
Okay,
Drucker is the inventor of the discipline of management. So basically, he made management
okay,
a discipline. He basically described what management is and described what a manager is. And then he was the world's first management consultant. So, so I'm reading the book. I've read a lot of books by Peter Drucker. Well, this is a book that describes his mode of thinking and how so many of the concepts we use in management today are actually from Peter Drucker, and how his mind formulated these concepts. So it's a very good book. It's not a very big book, 80 pages or thereabouts, and small book, but I've I'm about halfway through. It's a gift. It's a gift for someone. It's a gift for a mentor of mine, and I'm trying to read it before I give it to him.
okay, okay. Um, well, I haven't really been. I haven't. As for books, I'm still reading the Kavanagh book, even though I'm almost done with it. Um, but I read a very interesting article from on Quillette, which basically ties into the climate change thing. And it's an article by, let me see if I can find the name of the author. The author is not here. Okay. It's an article by Pascal Bruckner, a French writer and philosopher. And the title of the article is Europe's Virtues Will Be Its, okay, I'm coming. Europe's Virtues Will Be Its Undoing. So it talks about Europe's guilt, especially its guilt after the Second World War. The Second World War, its guilt, especially in Germany, after what the Nazis did in Germany, and how that sense of guilt and that sense of that guilt that is in the European mind has led them to be susceptible to things like the immigration thing, the climate activism. It has put them basically in a position where they cannot look at these things critically, look at what mass immigration is doing to them critically, what the being overly list the climate act the demands of the climate activists being willing to bend over for to basically alter their societies based on the demands of climate action, and how they feel they need to apologize for almost all the evil that exists in the world today, and how that is basically affecting them and is basically destroying their civilization. So it's a very good read it's a very long read, it's a very good read from Quillette. Okay, so again, the links will be in the description. The links will be in the description of the YouTube video once we're done with this. Okay, so I don't think there's any other thing to add, and I think we will end the show here. I think we'll end the show here. So, for those who have followed live and for those who would watch,
Any
we want to say, okay, any final words?
Thank you for watching, and see you next week, maybe.
Okay, Tosin.
Like in the words of Abigail, paraphrasing Abigail, words don't kill people, bad people kill people.
Okay. Again, like last week, I don't really think I have any witty remarks to end the show with. So I'll just say, well, thank you for joining us again today, and we hope to see you next week.
Leave a like and subscribe.